Hello everyone, and thank you for coming. My name's Emma and I'm one of the librarians here at Leeds Central Library, and today we're in the art library and in the drawing room. We're delighted to be welcoming you to our online art workshop, which is creating Assemblage, all about To Kill a Mockingbird. So in a moment I'll hand you over to our artist Jo Knowles from Space 2 to guide you through the workshop. But first, I just wanted to explain that we've been funded by Libraries Connected and BBC Arts to celebrate some of the 100 novels that shaped the world. Of course, we'd originally hoped to do this in real life, but we've managed to do lots of activities recently via Zoom, and we may continue for a little while longer. The novels chosen by a panel have been written over the last 300 years and range from children's classics to popular page turners, organised into themes, and they reflect the ways books have helped shape and influence our thinking. So the themes are identity, love and romance, crime, adventure, life, death and other worlds, politics, power, protest, class and society, coming of age, family and friendships, and rule breakers. So a quick introduction to Kill a Mockingbird. Kill a Mockingbird is a novel by the American author Harper Lee, and it was published in 1960, and it was instantly successful. In the United States and the UK, it's widely read in schools. It's become a classic of modern American literature, winning the Pulitzer Prize. The plot and characters are loosely based on Lee's observations of her family, her neighbours, and an event that occurred near her hometown in 1936 when she was 10. Despite dealing with the serious issues of rape and racial inequality, the novel is renowned for its warmth and humour. Atticus Finch, the narrator's father, has served as a moral hero for many readers and a model of integrity for lawyers. The historian Joseph Cornell explains, in the 20th century, To Kill a Mockingbird is probably the most widely read book dealing with race in America, and its main characters, Atticus Finch, the most enduring fictional image of racial heroism. The primary themes of To Kill a Mockingbird involve racial injustice and the destruction of innocence. Scholars have noted that Lee also addresses issues of class, courage, compassion, and gender roles in the Deep South. Now, Lee refused to write an introduction for her book, but did write in 1995, introductions inhibit pleasure, they kill the joy of an anticipation, and they frustrate curiosity. However, let's set the scene. So the story is told by six-year-old Jean Louise Finch and takes place during the 3 years, 1933 to 35 of the Great Depression, in the fictional town of Marycomb, Alabama. Nicknamed Scout, she lives with her older brother Jem and their widowed father Atticus, a lawyer. Jem and Scout befriend a boy named Dill who visits Marycomb to stay with his aunt each summer. The three children are terrified yet fascinated by their neighbour, the reclusive Arthur Boo Radley. The adults of Marycomb are hesitant to talk about Boo, and few of them have seen him for many years. The children feed each other's imagination with rumours about his appearance and reasons for remaining hidden, and they fantasise about how to get him out of the house. After 2 summers of friendship, Dale, Scout and Jem found that someone is leaving them small gifts in a tree outside the Radley place. Now, last year, 2020, the novel was number 5 on the list of the top checkouts of all time by the New York Public Library. So it's obviously still very, very popular. So now over to Jo from Space 2 to guide you through the workshop.
Hello, everybody. What we're doing with this project is we're going to start looking at To Kill a Mockingbird and to create a work based on Joseph Cornell, the artist. Now, if you're not familiar with Joseph Cornell, he was an artist working in America during the earlier 20th century, and he died in 1972. Now, Joseph particularly worked with using boxes to create his assemblages in. He used a lot of found objects, and he liked to use different themes within his work, such as birds, cinema, opera, ballet. Although he led quite a reclusive life, just staying at home living with his family, He created these small worlds within a box which celebrated his interests and the things that he found. He often used things that were from theatre or from ballet or opera. So he'd collect tickets, he'd collage from entertainment magazines. He would use pieces of text which he liked to show very clearly on his artwork so that people could read it. He would often have things hidden in drawers so that he could create a sense of mystery and intrigue in the object. His objects are often like furniture. They might have opening doors, they may have lids that you can remove. They may be set up like a theatre set, so with repeated flats creating depth within his box. Joseph Cornell was a master recycler way before it was fashionable. He used to go out and find things and use them within his artwork. He often had all kinds of little bits and pieces hidden away, using things such as corks, coins, maps, jars, bottles, matchboxes. He was very interested in astrology and travel, although he never travelled out of America himself. His work was sometimes arranged like a museum. He would use glass jars like specimens arranged in the Natural History Museum, but containing very odd things to tell his own story. He often worked with text and used common themes in his work, such as birds. He liked to use different pots and sizes and have things hidden within and putting fabric on the top of them. His astronomy pieces were often concentrated on circles and glasses, and he often used things like eggs. He was very interested in bubbles, which came from old paintings, such as this one, called Soap Bubbles, which he did a whole series of work about. Now, Cornell was a really great artist to choose to do a book about, to do a project about literature, because his work is literally like a picture of a picture of an idea within a box. So very often, his work told a whole story within it. And often he had humour and different functions within his work. So this one was built like a penny arcade machine, but featuring famous film stars as the backdrop. Now, when we came to this project, the novel that we chose for this session was To Kill a Mockingbird, which Emma's just told you a little bit about. Now, this is a wonderful story which you can approach from lots of different ways. The characters are really vibrant and really well drawn in this book, and there's a huge variety of characters with many different characteristics, many different attitudes within the book. So my starting point for the book was thinking about the main periods of drama within it. So I started by picking out some pages that I thought were really relevant to me as part of the story. So as I marked the pages, I also photocopied them, but Cornell used to just rip books up. I felt a little bit nervous about ripping up a book. I'd rather photocopy it if I can. But if you have an old book, feel free to take things out of it. So the initial starting point for me was any box that you could use. It could be a cardboard box, it could be an old suitcase, it could even be a wooden drawer. Cornell's boxes tended to be made out of wood with lots of things hammered into them. But just for simplicity on this project, and so that people can find things easily at home, we said just use whatever you find. If you have a shoe box, an old cardboard box, you can use whichever suits you. Now, to begin with, your box needs to be a suitable size and scale. So think about the feeling you get from the book and the atmosphere. Because what we're going to do first of all is use the book as a background for the story. So however the book made you feel, think about that as a way of decorating your box. So the first thing I did was printed out an awful lot of text because I wanted to use the text. And I also especially chose significant moments within the story that I thought were very interesting to read. Cornell was very keen that you could read all the writing. So although I've treated the writing in this box, you can still read it quite clearly. Now this one started out just as a normal box that was quite thin cardboard. So what I've had to do with this one, first of all, is just do a bit of reinforcing with corrugated. And I just did that simply using PVA and double-sided tape. So when you're sticking things down dry, the double-sided tape works really well. When you want to stick on like lots of collage materials like this in large sheets, it's better to use a wet glue like PVA. So the way I did it was pasted up the sheets of paper to go on the box once I've measured them to fit on the right size, and then laid them out for 5 minutes. You have to give it 5 minutes for the paper to stretch, or it'll go all bubbly when you come to put it onto your box. So spread it onto your box on the sides or on the back or on the inside, whatever you want to cover. And then use the brush that's still wet to press the paper down and you'll get it adhered really nicely. Now, another tip I'd give you on this book, on this box, is to use some tape. So around the corners and the awkward parts, you may want to put a hinge on your box with like an opening door, as Cornell really liked people to have a look around his piece. He didn't want it to be sitting there like a sterile piece of work in a gallery. He wanted people to explore. He wanted a sense of mystery. He wanted to engage his viewer to feel free to handle the box and have a look within it. So with this one, what I've done is I've done my box to the stage that we're at for this first session, looking at the background and the initial starting point for the book. So for mine, I really felt like the book had a really sort of hot and close atmosphere. And I wanted to also make it almost set in the past. So I chose sort of mustardy and bright yellow colours and mixed it with the PVA. Now, don't worry if you haven't got a lot of paint at home. I'm an artist, so I hoard things and I've got lots of art materials. But if at home you just have the basic stuff, maybe the odd cereal box or something like a shoe box, then you can always use things like old tea bags, you can use coffee to try and age things. But what I would do is stick all your collage materials on first, make sure it's all fully stuck down, let it dry out, and then put your tea bag stain over the top of it. Now, there's lots of other things. You can use whatever you like within your box, but the idea is to use ready-made objects. Now, there's a whole series of different pieces of artwork throughout time that have used ready-made objects, starting with Marcel Duchamp. But what it means is basically using an object that you might have around the house or something you might find to create an idea or symbol within your work. Or it might be the entire piece of work. Within this one, I really wanted to show the extreme racial divide in the book, the story. So it's about the very different experiences of the white characters and the black characters. So for my box, once I got it completely covered with the different text and story and got the inside and outside done, I really wanted to divide the book up and to make it really, really obvious and really painful, the divide that was happening as described in the story. I also wanted to relate this box to what's currently happening in contemporary times. I didn't want this to be like a little lost world of the past, because people's experiences at the moment just they haven't changed that much, to be honest. So as I've created the racial divide, I've put some holes in the box and put the sticks coming out to show that it's still happening today. The situation has not changed that much between black and white people in America. The George Floyd case was ongoing as we were making these boxes. So it was hard to ignore the contemporary, the similarities really between the contemporary times and the times of the past. So that's what I wanted to show with this. And once you've got your box ready, you've almost set the scene for what part of the book that you're interested in. So for me, I was particularly, as I say, interested in the racial divide and the difference between the characters, and the point that there should be no difference. So Atticus is getting on helping Tom. Calpurnia is getting on with Scout and helping her and bringing her up in a really beautiful way, much like her own mother would have done. There's lots of little offshoot stories within this book, little bits of which that I really wanted to capture. So I've got the idea of the massive tree, looking up at it as if you were a small child. And then I've got this little piece of wood that I've screwed on, which is going to represent the little notch in the tree where Boo Radley was leaving presents for the children. I've got some ideas about using the characters and showing the exchange between the characters. The really positive exchange is what I'd like to focus on. So how Atticus is really trying to help to save this man's life, and how he completely and utterly humiliates the accusers of Tom within the novel, which eventually leads to a very disastrous attempt at revenge. The novel is beautifully written in the way that it begins with Jem's broken arm and ends with Jem's broken arm, but there is such a lot goes on in between. And Scout writes a little summary in between while she's discussing the novel. She says it as a simple list of things that happen, but when you read the full text, you read the real complexity and the detail of what really happened within her life. Now, Atticus, within my box, I'm going to have him sort of floating up here and trying to get through the divide. And he's trying to, because Cornell used a lot of birds in his work, he's trying to give feathers to Tom, to give him the wings to fly out of the situation he's in. So that's my idea for how I'm moving this box on in the future. Now, what you can do is you may find that you see, as you read the book, I found that I saw lots of pictures in my head of how it should work. So I started drawing some sketches, which is one way you can start if you want. So I had a little outline of how the box would go and some ideas about what I'd like to put into it. But you will also find, if you're working truly with assemblage, that you might find lots of different objects that represent what you're going to do your work on. So Cornell used to use lots of different things quite regularly, such as corks and little wooden circles. So how much you are inspired by Cornell or not is up to you. It's just about creating a truth, how your feelings are about the novel and what your interpretation of it is. We've done a couple of workshops this morning and we've already had very, very different interpretations of each novel. Each person sees it from their own perspective. So these boxes are not only a portrait of the novel, but they also become a portrait of you and what your values are and what you see from the work. So the idea is to begin your box by decorating it, setting the scene. Then the next session, what we'll do is we'll start to use objects and start to locate objects into your box and to compose it. Now, you can use anything that you like. It can be things that you find around your house. You may go out onto a walk and find different natural objects you want to use. You may find stuff in charity shops. You may just have bits of stuff in your old drawers. There's always a way of doing things without, even if you haven't got lots of art equipment. So for example, you could just write out some of the text and put some quotes onto your box. You could also, if you can bring up images, you could trace the images using baking paper. You can use various things in your home. You might even want to put spices within your box to give it a smell. You might think about all the senses. Although Cornell's boxes were really good to touch and play with, mine definitely wouldn't be, because I've used the spikiest rose thorns that I could find, just to make a really vicious statement about the atmosphere at the time and the division between people. So as your starting point, read your book, make notes or drawings of whatever you think your book, the pictures the book will create in your mind. Go and see what you've got in your house or what you can find very easily. Don't spend money on it. Just use whatever objects you can find or improvise with. I've cut things out of magazines. This is something that Cornell often did. So I've got quite a few blue jays, which for me in the book are going to represent the people kind of with the bad attitude, and the mockingbird within the book, who represents the guy who does nothing but sings beautifully and makes everyone's life better, but is accused of a terrible crime. There may be little symbols within the book that you find significant. So for me, within the Mockingbird, I found the Mrs. Dubose story very interesting. And when Atticus finally tells us what she's been through, after seeing her from the children's perspective, it becomes very interesting. But her final insult to Jem, even after she's died, is to give him a white camellia in a box, which he hated and was very angry about. So there may be little elements of the story that you like to capture like that. That's one part that I'm hoping to capture within mine. You may want to use Cornell's theme of often having lots of little jars of objects. He also has lots of little drawers and things to look into. So when you make your box, don't think of it all being on display at once. Think about creating a sense of magic and mystery within it. So I hope this is all clear for you. What we're going to do is we're going to try and photograph each box as it goes along. So if possible, if you can, if you could photograph your materials, your inspiration, any objects, and then maybe take us a series of still images showing how your box has developed over time. And at the end of this project, we're hoping to have a little exhibition, either virtual or in reality, just to show all the work that everybody's done. So I hope you'd like to have a go at this project and come to a Zoom meeting if you would. Thank you.
Unmute. Thank you so much, Jo. Absolutely fantastic. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.